Hello, my friends. I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table. And hey, we are still working on cycle 10 of A Game Not Traveled, or this would be Lost Cause, right? On the planet Fairwind. And one of my event roles or one of my intended things to do for cycle 10 was to find some more information about this industrial age population that's inhabiting the swamp world that's within my system. And so to do this, I've already sent risk sending one of my mining ships there to start mining the remoter areas of the planet in order to gain the resources there that I need pretty badly back at my colony. And every time you do something like this, you risk having a first encounter. And first encounters can go any direction you can imagine. And part of it has to do with you and that player, your house lord, and how they decide to proceed in dealing with a scenario like this. One of the things I personally like to do, of course, is do observation and exploration. I like to know more about what I'm getting into before I stick my neck into it. But you could just go in and force and throw the flag and demand them to bow down and kiss your backside and see how that goes too. The rules work either way. And so what we need to do is first is to understand a little bit more what we're dealing with here. So an industrial age, the Iron Age is a -2 on the Imperial Bureau of Cultural Advancement's Tigora scale. The primitive civilizations are now advancing into advanced cultures, late 1800s to early 1900s Earth. Industrial revolutions seem to occur every decade now. Electricity is spread while mechanization and technological specialization has advanced into areas of mass production. Education, at least at the rudimentary levels, have become commonplace. Medicines and healthcare improve, and increases in food production make it cheap and plentiful for the majority of thingies. Governments, while still at the national or city-state levels, have become more cultured as well. The social, economic, and racial issues among these world populations and governments are also increasing the chances of large-scale conflicts. These are prevented through diplomacy and compromise whenever plausible. 25% chance or less that such a conflict has been fought in the last century, possibly recently enough to have left a planet in a downward spiral in development as survivors attempt to recover. This has happened. Double the primitives need to show the results of lost industry, agriculture, and population. Dealing with these things may be difficult or dangerous, as superstition and fear of anything not them abounds, as the age of reason has little to do with cultural interaction with beings from another world. Chances are that your first contact will be mistaken as some form of alien from space or another dimension is high. This is reflected by making a yes, no, maybe roll to determine if they do this. If they do apply a -6 modifier to your first contact roll to see if they're hostile. If not, then use a -30% modifier to first contact. So, looking at this, if I were to somehow acquire this planet and take direct control and management over of it, this is the list to show me how much resources and mineral resources and manufactured materials that this planet will require on every cycle to operate well. And if I can't meet those needs, I got to financially cover them, which is one of the reasons why when you're talking potentially millions of population or tens of millions of population, it's quite plausible that it may be a long, long time before the House can just assume direct control over them. There are many ways, though, to bring about advancements outside that sort of scenario, including interfering and things like this. The downside is we don't know that others aren't doing that already. That is one of those scenarios when I keep getting these guild rolls and I consider where are they at, what are they doing. I mean, if the guilds already made contact with these people and they've already began to exploit them and have been doing so for some time, that could become a problem too, because legally in the eyes of the Imperium, that's a big no-no. Not that we're Star Trek by any means. We do not have that caveat that says we are not supposed to interfere with a developing nation's or species development, because that's not how humans really would work. sorry there, Gene Roddenberry, but that was a fantasal Edenness wishful thinking, because that is not how humanity works at all. And we are far more in common with the Ferengi when it comes to exploiting stuff than we would be the damn the way that they would have the Federation and Star Trek operate. So that's just the possible scenarios and issues and things like this. So we this runs the gamut. So when we talk about potential, I got everything from the Stone Age to frickin' Stone Age to Information Age to Space Age. So ideally, if you run across a population as Space Age, or even advanced enough into the technological computer age, the odds are that that first contact would be less of a problem for them. And there's also a big possibility that at any scale that they're actually a former colony that's failed at some point in history. Now, the galactic history for humanity is exceeding about 8,000 years at this moment, so the possibility is that that's one of those things that we could uncover, that they do have a common background with some genome that we already know about, which puts us on a better ground than having to come up with a brand new thing from scratch, because that can be a challenge. And I've done it. I have done it, so I know firsthand. So we have rules, of course, for first contact, then the first contact chart, permanent considerations, permanent governments. We can determine, right? So some of the things we want to I want to determine before I purposely go out of my way to make contact with the locals on purpose is to, come on, stop we. Jesus, why are we just so damn jiggy today? It's just driving me nuts. Can be great on the video side of things neither. So anyway, it can add a whole nother levels of complication and stuff. So I want to do as much observation, preferably without making first contact at all. Now, one of those early things we would like to determine is just what kind of genome we're dealing with here. If we're dealing with a human or humanoid, a human-like appearance, then it will be far easier for my agents to infiltrate and to manipulate and to investigate and to do change. If we're dealing with a very overt alien species, then we have problems that I don't have the technology for at this current level. This isn't to say down the pike I can't acquire the technology level and or purchase the technology itself to do things like body modification. There are actually some pretty extensive cybernetic or cyber and bioorganic implants that individuals can go through that will physically alter their experience, their physics and things, so they can look like something and blend in better. And then of course there's holo shroud technology and things like this that can help you blend in or hide better and things like this. But all that is at a higher tech level. It's not something accessible to a entry-level house. I mean, it's just the way it works. So, and to prepare for this, I know my mining ship's able to get in. So the odds are at late 1800, early 1900s. If there's an Air Force, it's very primitive and very crude. They're not going to have a lot of air travel. They don't have satellites in orbit, and so they may have dirigibles, airships. They might have, early 1900s style, 1910, 1920 style airplanes. Potentially the technology they developed it a little sooner. That's one of those things we have to kind of explore and determine what's there. See, now another potential way of tapping this resource is to create a protectorate. And that's the previous page talks about establishing a protectorate. So the house assumes a protective status over the planet. This then prohibits anybody other than the house from contacting or interacting with the inhabitants directly or indirectly, legally. That isn't going to stop it from illegally happening, because it's going to happen. And unless you have a really powerful military and navy to prevent it, the odds are it's going to be an issue. But by exploiting it, then you can negotiate with local factions. You can set up things so you can purchase or through trade goods and things that they require and need to acquire some of their more exotic materials and things like this that might be considered entertainment items or entertainment goods or exotic goods that can be resold at a higher profit on the bigger market. And in addition to that, you can also be in a position to intervene if they have a crisis in, I don't know, a plague or an illness breaks out. See, that's another thing. Generally speaking, we kind of nudge and step around in a lot of sci-fi games is just how much an impact our individuals have when they interact with somebody they've never interacted with before on both sides of the table. So we can bring illnesses and diseases to a native population that decimates them. And the other side of the coin can be true. They might have something they're immune to that decimates us. And so we make a wink and a nod that says we've all had our shots. Well, they didn't have their shots. So there's risks. There's always risks. Now, I don't advocate going out of your way and playing 21 questions by generally creating those risks in advance, but there's a few mechanics, the occasional event enrolled that pertains to that sort of stuff. And then we at that point, we address it when we come to it. So to that end, I have created two more special agents. This would be Damien Tarot and Amber Core, and they are members of the House's Health and Sciences Ministry, and they are dubbed Xeno Scouts. So I'm going to use my drop shuttle and to get them from Fairwind to the as yet named Swamp Planet, and I'll let them off. Now, I don't have intentions of my drop shuttle hanging around for very long. So I figure they go over, they drop them off, them get their initial observation, figure it out whether or not it's a situation where they can safely go on and stay behind, because there's a real good possibility I'll never find them again. I mean, there is that possibility. The other side of it is I don't have a communication satellite in orbit, so in order for them to communicate back to the house, that would require them to bounce a signal through my mining ship, as long as the mining ship is on the planet or in the vicinity of the planet, or the drop shuttle. So we have to look at it from that perspective. And so to protect my highly valuable asset, as my drop shuttle is my only shuttle that's I have at this current point in time, it's quite valuable to me, and I want to maintain its value by keeping it. So to help protect it, I'm including a squad from my house lord's protector service. So especially the Protector Service is the equivalent of the Secret Service. So the Secret Service does more than just protect the President of the United States. They actually do a number of things, including work for the Treasury Department. So in an aspect like that, they are a private security force or a royal security guard or whatever for the House Lords specifically, and the House Lords' residence, the executive office, the core building for the administration, things like this. So they come out with, you start out with 2 platoons, that is 10 squads of 5 people apiece. So I've choose to break them down into squads early on because it's just they're going to operate likely in that manner. And at some point I may choose to make special agents, which at that point I would have a squad of special agents, or 5 individuals, 4 to 6 individuals that would constitute part of that, or they would operate separate from the Protector Service under the aegis of the Executive Ministry. That is all part of that's allowed within the rules of operating your various ministries. So just like Fred Dodge and his co-ranger works for Culture and Labor, our Ministry of Culture and Labor, these fine folks are working for Health and Sciences, which makes sense because that means they may have a little more skill set. Ironically, I don't have any of these. They're just tried level 1, Tech 1 individuals with no sets of skills pertaining to anything. It's just this is what they wanted to do for a living, and this is where we're going to exploit them. So they'll either die or they will advance and become better and perhaps gain skills. All right. So there are guinea pigs. My guinea pigs for exploring this swamp planet better, and potentially the canaries in the coal mine, right? So it doesn't take anything for my shuttle to get over there and to make a landing. So the first thing I want to do is to determine, does the drop shuttle land without getting spotted? And that's just straight up, down, yes, no. And we're kind of going to go down that little rabbit hole right off the bat, because this is how we're going to get started. And 77. 77 is yes with a plus 10. So they managed to make yes, they landed without getting spotted, plus 10. Did they spot any settlements on the way down? Ideally, I would like to be close to one of these settlements. So we get another D plus a plus 10. And we get a 39 plus 10 is 49. 49 is a hard maybe. So they spotted something that might be a settlement. They're not sure. And we're going to say that they landed within a few kilometers of them, just like my Fred Dodge. Fred Dodge and his co-ranger, each one got an ATV for moving around. I brought an ATV for both Damien, Taro, and Amber Core, but also 5 additional ones for my squad of protectors. So that was 1.1 tons of utility vehicle that I used out of my production to give them all some mobility. And then I allotted a half a ton of food, a half a ton of water, and a half a ton of chemical fuel or chem for the agents. So potentially they have enough food, water, and fuel sources to keep them functioning and mobile on this planet for an undetermined amount of time. Because if I choose to leave them behind and return my shuttle to Fairwind, they're going to be left behind. Another option potentially would be to have the shuttle lift off and hang out in orbit. Now, unlike my starships, the shuttle only has 3 cycles worth of supplies, and I used one of those to get here. And I have one; it'll take one to get back to Fairwind on the next cycle. So I would be able to linger for 1 cycle in orbit. Now, I could potentially land the drop shuttle, bring 5 tons of consumables, 5 tons of water and food along with the shuttle, and not use the fuel cells. So at that point, they would just remain on the surface, and the crew would sustain themselves from stores. The downside to that is I should by rights roll every cycle they're there to see if somebody stumbles across them, because we don't know jack about this planet. We don't know how big the population is. We don't know what they are, all right, so on and so forth. So that's just the nature of this. So my shuttle lands without getting spotted, and they've spotted what they think is a settlement, which maybe turn out to be a farmstead or an outpost or some, I don't know, some hobos camp for all I know. So I'm going to say, is it close by? Sometimes everything's worth taking time. So 59 plus 5 is 64. So 64 is a yes, plus 10. So there's no real way to put this other than to say outright, do the agents, or should say, are the agents affected by atmosphere? Now, I'm saying it's a breathable world, but I want to know, do they immediately go out and then they spend 2 days wandering around outside the drop shuttle, getting used to the planet, like claiming themselves? Do they notice any adverse effects right away? Because keep in mind, I don't have biohazard suits, and I don't have hostile environment suits. These are things you can acquire or manufacture. So if there's a problem, I'm going to have to manufacture some, and ideally I would do that anyway and have some available. Then they would go in with a suit, and explore the planet. First, there are ways of doing scientific research to determine if the planet's viable, but that requires a lot more elements. So I would either need to get a bunch of samples and have them bring it back to my science lab at Fairwind and then spend 5 cycles doing that research, or I need a science platform or a science deck, ship with a science deck that can come to this planet to do that research. And it would still take 5 cycles because that's just the nature of how this stuff works. So 97, holy crap. Are the agents affected by the atmosphere? So that is a hard yes. Eesh. Makes you almost not want to do that kind of roll, does it? No modifier. Okay. Does it kill them? Did they die? 71. I should have said, did they get sick? 71. So yes, they got sick. Jeez. Okay. I'll have to do that. I have to roll to see if they die. Edison, oh my god. 98 plus 20 is 100. So 100%, yeah, they died. So, KIA. So both of my wonderful 2 Xeno Scouts had just bit the bullet. Jeez, I could tear them up, but I just scratched their name out and used the stats for somebody else. Oh my god. So, okay, so now we know there's something in the atmosphere. We don't know exactly what it is. It could be a virus, it could be a bug, it could be something that's incompatible in the makeup of the oxygen that killed my damn agents. And, right, just out of shits and giggles, there's no modifier on that. Did they die? Did they die quick? Did they die right away? And Jesus, 97. So they walked out. They weren't out of the ship. I don't know. Let's see. They were outside for 9 minutes. Within 9 minutes of getting out of the ship, out of the drop shuttle, they croaked. Thankfully, I didn't debark the. That's what the Xeno scouts took their risk for. So this brings me with some conundrums about this planet. First, I now know that it's not going to be something I'm going to immediately deal with. That doesn't mean that there's something there. We don't know what's causing this, and without doing research, we're not going to know. That means I need to get some biosuits, some hazard suits, send another crew over here, preferably some scientists and some specialists who can do yes, Fluffer, do some experiments or get samples and bring them back to my research lab. And since nobody else on my ship has those, and no, I don't have spacesuits either. Those are items that would have been purchased and need to be added to your TOE and or manufactured. So we can produce those things. That is something I might need to have to do when I get done producing the round of auto rifles I did, is to do a round of hostile environmental suits, which are basically what that sounds like. They're rated for you know pretty much every environment that you can't normally breathe in without a respirator, and then send somebody over here to take samples and bring them back to research to figure out what the hell's going on over here. If it's something we can just manufacture a vaccine for and take a shot, I mean, it could be a spore, it could be a bug, it could be a virus, obviously. It could be, like I said, it could be some chemical makeup in the atmosphere itself. I mean, there could be some toxic stuff that the natives released somehow, or it's just something they're immune to. I mean, that's the nature of this business. So that was pretty eventful in a way. That's kind of anticlimactic, or sets us up for a whole other set of conundrums and issues. Anyway, this is Rick, and tell you guys have a great weekend. Going on, my friends? This is Rick, and hey, if you like the channel, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, tell your buddies, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell anybody else that's in gaming industry or gaming fandom that says, hey, this is a channel worth checking out, right? Till next time, I hope you guys have yourself